Bright Tuty. Every student matters.
Now we are going to study about estimation. Okay, so let's see some news over here. India drew with Pakistan in a hockey match watched by approximately 51,000 spectators in the stadium and 40 million television viewers worldwide. Okay. The next news is approximately 2,000 people were killed and more than 50,000 injured in a cyclonic storm in coastal areas of India and Bangladesh. Okay, another news is over 13 million passengers are carried over 63,000 kilometers route of railway track every day. Now, can we say that these were exactly as many people as the numbers quoted in these news items? For example, in the first news item, there were exactly 51,000 spectators in the stadium. Now, whatever amount or whatever number was quoted, now is that the exact number? For example, the first news says that around 51,000 spectators were there in the stadium. Now, exactly were there 51,000 spectators, or there were less spectators, or there were more than that spectators? So what we did is we did an approximation, okay? Or did exactly 40 million viewers watch the match on television? Now we don't know whether 40 million viewers watched the television or more than 40 million viewers watched the television, but we did an approximation on that basis. Obviously not. The word approximately itself shows that the number of people were near about these numbers, right? So that is what is the meaning of approximation. Clearly 51,000 could be 50,800 or 51,300, but not 70,000, right? So this is the study of approximation that we are doing. Similarly, 40 million implies much more than 39 million, but quite less than 41 million. That is why we are approximating it to 40 million. But certainly it is not 50 million, right? So all this that we are doing, this is approximation, okay? Right. Now moving forward, we'll move forward and we'll talk a little bit more about approximation over here. So estimation to the nearest. Now what do you mean by estimation to the nearest? Look at the following. We have got 259, 260, 261, 262, 263, 264, 265, 266, 267, 268, 269, 270 and 271. So these numbers are marked over here. Find which flags are closer to 260. Now we have to find out which flags are closer to 260. So 260 is over here. So I think that this flag is closer to 260. And find the flags which are closer to 270. So I guess that this flag is closer to 270 and this flag is closer to 270. So these two flags are closer to 270 and these two flags are closer to 260. So this is an approximation. Now locate the numbers 10, 17 and 20 on your ruler. Okay. Is 17 nearer to 10 or 20? The gap between 17 and 20 is smaller when compared to the gap between 17 and 10. Okay. So this is my ruler. Okay. Now we have to locate 17. Okay. So on the ruler, here we have got 17 and here we have got 20. Okay. Now which is nearer to 20? Definitely we can see that 17 is nearer to 20. Okay. And 10 is far away from 20. Now the gap between 17 and 20 is smaller. You can see that this is a smaller gap as compared to this gap. When compared to the gap between 17 and 10. Okay, so this gap is bigger and this gap is smaller. So 17 is nearer to 20, right? Okay, now let's move forward. So we round off 17 as 20. So when we are going to round off 17 to the nearest 10, then we will round it off as 20. Okay, now consider 12, which also lies between 10 and 20. Now 12 lies between 10 and 20. Here is where 12 lies. Now, however, 12 is closer to 10 than to 20. We can see that 12 is closer to 10 as compared to 20, right? So, we round off 12 to 10, correct to the nearest tens. So, if we have to round off 12 to the nearest 10, we will round it off to 10. Okay. How would you round off 76 to the nearest 10? Now, what about 76? Now, 76 is closer to 80 as compared to 70. Okay? There is, the difference over here is of 6 and here the difference is of 4. So, definitely it is closer to 80 as compared to 70. So, if we have to round off 76 to the nearest 10, we will round it off to 80. We see that the numbers 1, 2, 3 and 4 are nearer to 0. Okay, these numbers are nearer to 0 than to 10. So, we round off 1, 2, 3 and 4 as 0. Numbers 6, 7, 8 and 9 are nearer to 10. Okay, so we round them off as 10. And number 5 is equidistant from both 0 and 10. It is a common practice to round it off to 10. Okay. So, this is a common practice when we are rounding off to 10, rounding off to nearest 10. In this case, if we talk about 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, so this is closer to 0. And if we talk about 6, 7, 8 and 9, all these are closer to 10. Okay, so when we have 1, 2, 3, 4, we round it off to 0. And when we have 6, 7, 8, 9, we round it off to 8. And when we have 5, now 5 is equidistant from 0 and from 10, but we round it off to 10. So, this is the basic and simple rule that we follow while rounding off or estimating to the nearest 10. Okay? Okay, so now we have some try these questions over here. We have to round these numbers to the nearest 10. Okay, so let's start with 28. Okay, so we see that at the end we have got 8 and 8 is closer to 10 as compared to 0. We know that, we have already seen that. So rounding off 28 to the nearest 10, we will have 30. Now what about 32? Now 2 is closer to 0 as compared to 10. So we will round it off to 30. So this will also get rounded off to 30. Now 52, if we are rounding off 52 to the nearest 10, it will be rounded off to 50. 41, if we are rounding off to nearest 10, we have 1 at the end, so we will round it off to 40. Okay, now 39, if we have to round it off to the nearest 10, now we have got 9 at the ones place. Okay, so it is closer to 40 as compared to 30. Okay, now if we have to round out 48 to the nearest 10, it will be rounded off to 50. If we have to round off 64 to the nearest 10, it will be rounded off to 60. If we have to round off 59 to the nearest 10, it will be rounded off to 60. If we have to round off 99 to the nearest 10, it will be rounded off to 100. Okay. Then if we have to round off 215 to the nearest 10, it will be rounded off to 220. Okay. Now 1453, if we have to round off, we have got 3 at the end, so this will be rounded off to 1450. Now let's talk about 2936. If we have to round off 2936, it will be rounded off to 2940. Okay, so we see that this is how we can round off these numbers to the nearest tens. Okay, let's move forward. Estimating to the nearest hundreds by rounding off. Okay. So, is 410 nearer to 400 or to 500? So, we have to find that out. Now, 410 is closer to 400. So, it is rounded off to 400. Okay, correct to the nearest 100. And 889 lies between 800 and 900. But it is nearer to 900. So, it is rounded off to 900. Correct to the nearest 100. Now, numbers 1 to 49 are closer to 0 than to 100 and so are rounded off to 0. And numbers 51 to 99 are closer to 100 than to 0, so they are rounded off to 100. So, this is rounding off to the nearest 100. In the previous section, we just studied about rounding off to the nearest 10. Now, we are studying about rounding off to the nearest 100. Okay? Alright. Now, number 50 is equidistant from 0 and 100 both. It is a common practice to round it off to 100. Okay? Now, check if the following rounding off is correct or not. Now, 841. Now, 841, so this is less than, we know that from 1 to 49, it is closer to 0. So, this is rounded off to 800. This is correct. Okay, now 9537. Now, rounding this off to nearest 100. This is correct. It has been rounded off to 9500. Absolutely fine. Now 49730. Now this is rounded off to again 100 because between 1 to 49 it is rounded off to 0, and from 51 to 99 it is rounded off to 100. So this is also absolutely fine. 2546. This is absolutely fine. It is rounded off to 2500. 286. Now this is wrong. 286 will be rounded off to 300. This should be rounded off to 300. So 286 should be rounded off to 300 because from 51 to 99 it is rounded off to 100. Now 5750. Okay, so 5750 we have 50 which is exactly equidistant from 0 and 100. So it is rounded off to 5800 still. This is completely fine. 168 is rounded off to 200. Completely fine. 149 is rounded off to 100. This is also exactly correct. And 9870 is rounded off to 9800. This is wrong because 70 is closer to 100 as compared to 0. So 9870 should actually be rounded off to 9900. Okay, because 870 is closer to 100, so 870 should become 900. So this is 9900. Okay, so we have corrected the ones which are wrong over here. All right, now let's move forward. Okay, some more estimations we are going to do. Now estimating to the nearest thousands by rounding off. Now we are estimating to the nearest thousand. We know that numbers 1 to 499 are nearer to 0 than to 1000. Okay, so these numbers are rounded off as 0. Okay, so numbers 1 to 499, they are nearer to 0 than to 1000. So these are rounded off to 0. And the numbers 501 to 999 are nearer to 1000 than 0. So they are rounded off as 1000. So basically, whether we are rounding off to the nearest 10 or to the nearest 100 or to the nearest 1000, the concept remains the same. Okay. Now number 500 is also rounded off as 1000. Now check if the following rounding off is correct or not. So we have to check this. So 2573. Now 2573 if we talk about, so we know that numbers from 501 to 999 are rounded off to 1000. So this has been rounded off to 3000. This is fine, completely fine. Now 53,552. So this has been rounded off. So 552 should be rounded off to 1000 because from 501 to 999 it is rounded off to 1000. So this is wrong. So 53552 should have been rounded off to 554,000. Yes. Now 6404 is rounded off to 6000. This is completely fine. 65,437. Okay, so 65,437 has been rounded off to 65,000. This is completely fine. 7,805 has been rounded off to 7,000. So this is wrong. 7,805 should be rounded off to 8,000 because 805 is nearer to 1000 as compared to 0. And 3,499 should be rounded off to 4,000. This is wrong because from 1 to 499 it should be rounded off to 0. So 3,499 should have been rounded off to 3,000 and not 4,000. Okay. Right. So we have corrected the ones which are wrong. All right.